As the international community tops just over 53,507,000 laboratory-confirmed cases of the coronavirus and just over 1.3 million deaths, Grenada is one of 23 countries worldwide that has recorded 0 deaths so far as a result of the pandemic. The island has, however, witnessed some daring quarantine evasions by returning nationals and visitors alike since the country reopened its borders to international travel on August 1st, 2020. The quarantine breaches included one where the offending party suffered a broken leg after jumping from a quarantine facility. Another case involved a foreign couple originating from the United States who had close contact with restaurant employees in the island's tourist belt in Grenada. As a result of their absconding, close to 24 Grenadians are currently under quarantine after close contact with the couple. This week on the Bub Report, we assess the efficacy of Grenada's enforcement of its home and hotel quarantine regulations as the coronavirus pandemic takes a decidedly deadly turn globally. For an all-angles look at this story, we are joined by Grenada's Attorney General Darshan Ramdani, Health Research Analyst Kizzy Belfon-Louison, and Manager of the True Blue Bay Boutique Resort, Marie Fielden. Also on the Bub Report, we welcome storyteller and comedian Paul Keynes Douglas, who was recently awarded an honorary Doctor of Letters by the University of the West Indies in Trinidad and Tobago.
That is why we have confusion in the West Indies. You know, for instance, when I went to school, we used to do the 23rd Psalm. And there was this line that went like this: surely goodness and mercy shall follow you all the days of your life. And it was only about last month I found out who Shirley was.
It's Sunday, November 15th, 2020, and welcome to Good morning, everyone, and let me take this opportunity to welcome you to this Sunday's edition of the Bub Report. I am your host, Kellan Bub, and this morning we're going to be having a very serious conversation with respect to coronavirus quarantine regulations in Grenada around recent quarantine absconsions and recent quarantine scares on the island. But first, I want to welcome Dr. Paul Keynes Douglas. First, let me congratulate you on your honor of receiving a Doctor of Letters from the University of the West Indies in St. Augustine. Paul, welcome to the Bub Report.
Thank you. Nice of you to have me. I'm enjoying being here. Looking forward to the talk.
Yeah, what have you been up to? What have you been up to during this quarantine period over there in Trinidad?
Well, I've been using the opportunity to really put all my files and all my scrapbook stuff, you know, all my I have a lot of stuff that I've been collecting over the years, and I've been looking for an opportunity to really put those things together. I've been doing it all along, of course, side by side, but now I have a lot more time to do that because I got to write my memoirs. So I'm getting all that stuff together so that I can, can really put it out soon because the time is passing. So I've lost, been spending a lot of my time doing that, putting together. I have a lot of new material too that I have to really, organize. So it's been a tough time of being able to do it because you have the time, and I'm looking forward to when this thing can just shift a little bit more so that we can go out and do stuff. I've also been doing some preparing some online material for children. I mean, doing some work with children's stories now, which will be going online. And looking forward to trying and get virtual presentations. I do talk tent every carnival, the talk shows, and I have my own Tim Tim show. In around October, I put on that aspect of my work. And every year I have these two big shows, but this year everything has gone upside down with COVID. So we were looking for new ways of getting back online, But it seemed like a long time, only 8 months, but really it seemed like 80 years since this thing has happened. But we keep them busy and try to keep the mind going, and that's most important at this time.
Yeah, you mentioned Talk Tent, and I know that Talk Tent is a headline event around the carnival season in Trinidad and Tobago. Unfortunately, there's not going to be a carnival next year.
Yeah, right.
So what would Talk Tent look like?
Well, boy, most of us at the moment are just trying to play it by ear because we have no real confirmation of what will be happening. I think most likely we'll do a virtual show, one, and the problem they're really getting sponsorship for it and getting the kind of support. And even I think we'll be having limited audience shows. Again, we don't know who's going to come to the shows yet because it's up to the public also to attend. Even if you have the show, if people have the confidence, they still come back. But they put things in place where you're going to have limited audience, maybe about 300 in the theater, and you're going to have social distance, and all the protocols will be followed. But the bottom line is you really have to wait and see if people will actually come out to shows. Of course, I think people are getting COVID fatigue too, and they really want a break. So I think a lot of them will take the opportunity, if given, and given the proper protocols to attend shows. So, but the most you can do is plan on paper at the moment, and hope that by the time, Carnival is still 2 months off, so hopefully by that time things will have loosened up a bit that we can have it. But the bottom line is really virtual presentations. Most people have been doing it. The big problem there, of course, is getting paid for it. How you get paid for these kind of shows online. And everybody, like in the West Indies, everybody trying to work out their own thing, We need one central basic thing to happen. But eventually somebody will come up with a basic center way of getting these shows online and paid for and so on. But everybody's experimenting. So eventually, I guess, it will become the new norm. We just have to learn to live with it and learn to get along with it. Of course, I am at this stage now, I ain't worrying too much about the future in that sense because young people now have to worry about the years ahead. I've had my years and they've been good years. So I could cruise through the last few years and enjoy life as much as I could. And as I say, get my work, the stuff I've done, and get those that material organized, and so that when it'll be there after I'm gone. And I say my memoirs have been working on them for a long time, and I think this is the opportunity to really get it together in a proper format, and then look forward to publishing or whatever. But the thing COVID has given us all the time to introspect, to think over stuff, and to sort of look forward to what we can do. And everybody's in the same boat, basically. You know what I mean? So it has to do, I guess, with your mentality, your individual approach to how you handle this sort of thing. But then when you're an artist, you really been isolating. Most time you don't have a 8-to-4 job. You have always been hustling anyway. So this is no different for me. Because from the time I started this thing, I've been hustling. To survive in the Caribbean, you have to hustle. From publishing books, getting CDs out, putting on shows, getting advertising. It has been a one-man hustle. I mean, being a good hustle too. I mean, it had the freedom to be who you want to be and what you want to be. So the COVID thing hasn't really changed much of that aspect of hustling. You just have to hustle a little more. But for the people who have never done it, it's a real problem because they're accustomed to a 8-to-4 job and a steady salary, and do they know how to live on a small income? As artists, we have learned to survive for a long time and very little. So this hasn't been that bad for us in that sense of psychologically surviving and psychologically organizing ourselves. Because to be an artist in the Caribbean, to survive in the Caribbean, especially if you're not employed, you're self-employed basically, you have to have years of experience of organizing your finances, organizing your life, organizing your home, all these things that normal people's salaries do. You still have to do it without a basic salary. So in other words, we have been already accustomed to this kind of a hustle. So that part of it is not bad. The bad part is the other side, the audience part.
Yeah.
They have changed too. So that part we have to deal with. But your personal part is not bad in that sense, you know. It is just, I say, the technical part of it, the marketing part. We have to depend on other people. That's where the real problem is. But then, as I said, everybody is in the same bag. And there's light at the end of the tunnel if you have a vaccine coming up and stuff like that. So you can look forward to the possibilities of audiences coming out. Once the audience would come out to attend, then we can go back to work, you know. But without the audience, we sort of like, you know, spinning top in mud, as you say, you know.
Right. Dr. Kings Douglas, certainly the work that you've done has spanned decades in the Caribbean. Your contributions span, books, comedy, the arts, journalism, media. In reflecting on the award that you received from the University of West Indies, how would you encapsulate your legacy? How would you want your legacy to be thought of?
Well, I think it really has been, let's say, an individual journey and a joyous one, because the best thing in life is to find something that you like to do for a living. You know, so it's not really a job; it's a joy. My joy is when I'm on the stage, when I'm performing, when I'm. I wish I didn't have to make money. You know, money has been really the problem because you have to do it for money. If they could get away from the money, then you can just live and enjoy and contribute and make, do your stories. But again, you have to survive, so you have to go to that aspect of it, but the joy of it is really finding something you can do that you like to do and you do for a living. The joy of it is seeing people enjoying you. When you go out, you get the joy in seeing the response of the audience, that you're bringing happiness to them, and that you welcome wherever you go. You're welcome because people want to hear a good story. They want to hear you. They want, we love old talk. We love gossip. We love brango. We love all them kind of things in the Caribbean. So anybody comes with that is welcome. I'm welcome in every home. I go to every island in the Caribbean. They know me. I have no problem at the airport. Everybody knows me, and you get a joy. But what you want to really be remembered for is that you made a contribution to the society. It's not the money part of it. Is that sometimes I say when you do a good show, it's not how many people come to the show, but how many people you reach in that audience. Sometimes at night you may only reach one person, right? And that's why God sent you that night to reach that one person with that one story. It may change his life, change his direction. You don't know. You never know who's listening. So it's not the amount of people in the audience, but really what your story does to it. And my thing is that because the stories of my first stories like Tantia the Oval, Sugar George, Rybert and the Kite, those were written in 1975. That's what we're talking about. And I can do them today for any audience and they still relate, they're still as fresh to them because they capture the spirit of a people. They capture the spirit of experience. So everybody enjoys not what I say, but what I remind them of what things they used to do. And in that way, I help them, in remembering themselves, of taking a sense of pride in who they are. And so you see the effect of that work, and you hope that you leave that kind of thing behind. That the story really help people. Because I meet people who say, "Boy, I've been listening to you for years." I know some of them know it by heart. Sometimes when they're performing in the audience too, because they know these stories so well. So that is, but you want the stories to remain and you want them to be used. You don't want them to lie there, gathering dust. They must find a way into the system where the children of today can hear them. Basically, you can't do everything. You can write it, voice it, produce it. You can't put it in the system either. So the system itself, the education system, has to the baton, take that from you and run with it. The artist can't do everything. You know what I mean? You can't put it in the school. You can't put it on the radio. You can't put it on television. That's the job of other people. But we are asked to write it, voice it, market it, print it, sell it, put it on the radio, get it into the school. That's a lot to ask for one man. So the moment you produce the work and leave it there, and hope that those who come behind can see the importance of it enough to put it on the curriculum, to put it where the other children can get it, today's generation. And we have the facilities there with computers and CDs and the technology to do it. But you must have the will. You must have the love for it. And therefore we need leaders who love the work just as much as I love it, who will say, let's do that. You don't have to be told to do it. It's something they must think of themselves because they know Grenada, they know the Caribbean, they know Trinidad, they know what we love, they know what will reach people. So what we call a political will. And that's not just for politicians, that's for teachers, educators, sponsors, everybody. You must have what we call a political will to make sure these things survive, Because Sam, we take these things for granted. We take all these things at Granans. We take the beach for granted. We take, the jokes for granted because it's so natural, so much a part of it. And that's the hard part about being very good. You make it look so easy that people forget it's a lot of hard work.
It
It's a
is
lot.
work.
Yeah.
The creative arts involve a lot of work, a lot of time.
But,
Yeah,
but the truth,
yeah. Go ahead.
I say, but the true artist makes it look so easy when he goes on the stage that people say, I can do that too. Anybody can do that. It's hard work, And then I never perform with paper. I have to have everything here. My stories, I always do, live stories without scripts, and therefore you have to have a very good memory and a very good, rehearsal schedule to make sure you remember all those things you're going to say. People ask you, how come you do that? I say, well, because I do a lot of work. I rehearse. It's like Tiger Woods spend years swinging at a golf club till you get perfect. We make it look so easy, but it's plenty of work going behind that. So a lot of those things that you want to let people know that, not just for me, but for the other artists, that is not easy, it's hard work. But a professional person makes it look like it's nothing. Like anybody can do that. So basically, that is what is the underlying essence of everything we do as an artist. You don't think about awards or rewards. That's the real award or reward is when people come up to you and say, "Boy, I like that story." My father used to play that record for me. 20 years ago, I grew up with you in my house. That is the reward.
Yeah.
The pleasure you give people, and you meet people who never thought even knew who you were. People who never you thought you didn't think they would read your books, and they say, we had a book home. Guys, the book people are thief the most. They tell me that. You see your book, people they leave all the Roman thing, but they gone with your book. They gone with your record.
It's very telling that they would leave the room and they go with the book, huh?
Nicely. So, but that's going back to thinking about it about what happened. But when you look at your journey, you begin to realize that you were supposed. I mean, I was supposed to be a lawyer. I mean, I and Maurice Bishop were studying together to go and do law at the time. Maurice went off to England, and I had one more credit to do in English, and I said, I ain't doing that. I ain't going to do on the radio because I love radio too. So I went to New York to do radio and television. Maurice went to England to do law, and we separated. And he went one way, I went the other way. But I was always into this concept of wanting to do talk, wanting to do whether it's law or whether it's radio or so I ended up here. So sometimes you believe that God wants you to do a certain thing, right? And if you make the right choice, it's not a problem. You have problems afterwards, but the way opens for you as you move forward because you're meant to do that. So you never really see trouble, because God wants that. And you just follow the opening that comes to you and things evolve. Sometimes you don't know where you're going next day, but you go. You never know where the next job is coming from, but it comes, And then you begin to look back and say, well, it's not really me, and this is something happening because I'm supposed to be doing that. And when you accept that, then you have no problem really with going forward because you always feel you're on the right track. So that's my advice to young people, choose the thing that you really feel that you want to do. This is the way you're meant to be. It may be the harder road, but you'll be always happy on it because that's what you're supposed to be doing. So it takes you a long time to really come to grips with that, because I should have been a lawyer, I should have been, you're practicing at the bar. It shouldn't mean you should be a storyteller because that's what God wants you to be.
And you're following your passion too. You're following your passion. It's about passion as well. Yeah. Now, Dr. Kings Douglas, you grew up in Grenada. You attended St. George's Methodist School, and you also attended Presentation College.
Yeah.
And you spent a lot of time in the town of St. George, Green Street area. What kind of impact did growing up in Grenada have on your comedy, on your cultural imagination of the Caribbean?
I would say Grenada had a lot because I was born in Trinidad, but we moved back to Grenada when maybe I was about 2 years old. My father in those days worked in different islands. He worked in Trinidad, St. Lucia. He was doing engineering stuff, with the health people. And so two of us were born in Trinidad. One was born in St. Lucia, that's Rara, the one you might know, and all the rest were born in Grenada, right?
You call him Rara? Is that his name? Ricardo?
Yeah. So he's St. Lucian actually, or was but Grenada has my early stories were heavily involved with the folk, like Laja Bless, Sukiya, Mama Malade, all those things are stories we heard growing up in Grenada. My influences were like Bibi Ballet with Selma Phillips, and her folk group, and Pamela Douglas. All these people were the people I worked with in the early days. I did dance. I was doing creative dance with Bibi Ballet, dancing bongo and shango and all them kind of things. So these are the things you grew up with. So obviously they were the things that embedded in your mind. So all my early storytelling was influenced by Grenada, because I didn't grow up in Trinidad. I grew up in Grenada, then I lived in Trinidad for the rest of my life. So Trinidad has made me the rest, it took take me the rest of the journey. But the early storytelling, the early things I said about, with Elijah Best and the Dwens and the Sukia, but even in Green Street, because Green Street was a very organized street. We had the best steel band, we had the best football, the best cricket, the butter, maestros, orchestra. We had a lot of things but that Green Street was popular for. Of all the streets, of course I know Green Street, but Green Street was the street in my days of growing up. We used to have sports, top against the bottom. Remember those days in Green Street, top versus bottom. We had sports. Green Street was very organized streets. And as a little boy growing up, these things you remember, because you were there as a little boy looking on, right? And then I lived Green Street is a stone's throw away from T. M. Marichaud, down on Ontario Street. And I could hear Marichauds when he had his political meetings in the pasture, up Green Street there. I can hear all his speech, Marichaud, I am the British bulldog, you know what I mean? So you listen to all these things and you don't know they're going into your mind and they're influencing the way you see life until long after when you begin to write. And you say, but wait now, this is where did I know this? Then when you're looking back, you realize you're really growing up in Grenada, growing up in Trinidad in those days, and then hearing Marichaud on his political meeting. It was a Marichaud pasture in those days, going down Green Street there, and then Gary. I remember Gary coming down dressed in his cream suit with his V for victory behind him, and he walking. I mean, a little boy, I've seen all this. He passed right outside.
That on his way when he went to walk on water.
Yeah, I was there that night. I was along the wharf that night holding a big flambeau. We had to have flambeau. The whole wharf, all the students were asked to stay around the wharf with this bamboo thing with fire on the top. And a little boy I hear with my bamboo and thing, and Gary coming on the harbor on the boat. I can remember that to this day, And all of us, it was fun for us. We have a big flambeau. We like the fire in the first place. We didn't mind that. But I remember Gary coming in his cream suit on the bow of the boat, and the boat coming across. But all that real drama and theater. I mean, I could tell you no, because it's so clear in my mind. I was 40-something years ago, more than that, 50 something, And my first, when we had the Gary strike, and Gary's coming on Lucas Street, right? With all the fellas marching and things, singing. And we were in Morris School in class. And you could see all the demonstrators and fellas walking down Lucas Street outside the window, all that passing. I am seeing that standard 3, I think, in those days I was. So you see all these memories are in your mind, and that's long before I even started writing or doing anything. And so these things very much influenced my early. A storyteller can only talk about the things he knows and things he sees, and therefore you reflect the moments that you live. Today, if I'm writing, I reflect Trinidad, I reflect the Caribbean, CARICOM, I'm in New York, wherever I've traveled. Those things come into the stories. But those early days before I left and traveled, it was all a Grenada presentation college. I mean, so many stories I had to tell about college, growing up with Eggies and all them kind of thing, in Old Fort picking.
Dominican house, you were in Dominican house.
With my little green, I have a big green D. My mother used to print a piece of ribbon and make the big D for Dominic.
That's right.
You go back, so it was really, but this is what storytelling is about, social commentary and all these things. I mean, storytelling is just another word for being a journalist, for being a social media. We just say storyteller. It's an easier word to say. But really and truly, it's much more than storytelling, because people think of a storyteller, well, just telling stories to little children. But it's really social commentary, it's marketing, it is radio, it is television, it is magazines, it's a lot, So I want children listening out there think that storytelling is just something you do in a library. No, it is a big thing. We just use the word storytelling because it's easier. I prefer the word storytelling. But people like to say I'm social marketing, and they are these big, nice technological terms, so make them feel very important. But really and truly, the media, what we do here now is storytelling, actually.
It is storytelling. It's fundamentally telling a story. That's what it is. Dr. Keens Douglas, thank you and congratulations. Any final thoughts before we go on to our next segment?
Yes, man. Thank everybody who support me over the years, and thank those who chose me for this award. I accept it on behalf of all the other storytellers, all the other people. A lot of us have been out there in the vineyard, as they say, for years, and it's a good thing to show other people behind that. There's light at the end of the tunnel. There people appreciate what you do, and it's just good. And looking forward to the support over the years, not just for me, but for the other storytellers, the other people trying to do what I'm doing, because it gets harder and harder every day to do these things individually. You need so much more support, but you have a lot of technology now to help, but you must have the will and the desire and the love for it to do it. So I tell you, if you feel like doing it, just go ahead and do it. The way will open. And thank you for having me, Mika. What you're doing is really something we need to do more of. Have people like you bring us forward and show us to the rest of the Caribbean. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Coons Douglas. It has been a pleasure. Congratulations again. And thank you for the amazing contribution you've made to the Caribbean imagination, the cultural imagination, the literary and comedic imagination of the Caribbean space. Certainly, what you've done and what you continue to do really represents us, and you are a quintessential Caribbean man in every sense of the word. And it's certainly been an honor to have you on the Bub Report this morning.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Folks, stay with us. We will be right back.
Individual who was, I'm told, charged yesterday was of the same belief. As far as they're concerned, they were swabbed, not taking into the reality or the common sense that you have to get results back, not recognizing as well from the very countries that they come from, they can't get results back sometimes for more than 7 days, and they have to wait. So it was a complaint from some of the individuals who were looking to return to Grenada that it was taking so long to get test results in the United States. Little Grenada has endeavored to get test results back within 48 hours. And we are doing so. But I think it is the same way they will have to do it in the US, wait for the test results. It is reasonable to expect individuals to know that you have to wait for your test results. When you go to the doctor, you go to the hospital to give test results on anything else, if you think you have any disease or anything else. It's not simply when you go give the sample of blood or stool or saliva or urine that you're cleared. No, you wait for the test results. So any attempts by individuals to imply that once they're swabbed, that they believed that they were free to go, I think we as a people have to tell them, look, stop trying that.
Welcome back, folks. And let me welcome my panelists for this morning's conversation on COVID quarantine protocols in Grenada. I'm happy to be joined again, my returning guest, Attorney General Darshan Ramdani. Thank you for coming back on the Bub Report. I also have Kizzy Belfon-Louison, who is a public health expert and who actually just completed her period of quarantine in Grenada. So Kizzy, congratulations. I trust that you are enjoying Grenada. I have some envy. I have some Grenada envy right now because you're there and I'm here. And Marie Estelle Fielden, You are the general manager out there at the True Blue Bay Beach Resort. And folks, what we want to do this morning is to just assess the efficacy of Grenada quarantine protocols in light of several incidents that have occurred with respect to returning nationals and visitors breaching the quarantine protocols. Certainly, it is a concern for Grenadians. It is a concern that these folks would have mingled with the general population, which then could put the general population at risk for COVID infections. Yesterday, there was an announcement of two more laboratory confirmed COVID-19 cases. I should also preface this by saying that we did also invite the public health officials in Grenada. We invited the Minister of Health to appear on the Bub Report. He declined. We also invited Mr. George Mitchell and the Chief Medical Officer. They also declined. Certainly, they are more than welcome to appear on the Bub Report, as we all want to ensure that we are capturing all sides of this conversation. Mr. Ramdani, I want to begin with you, sir. So far, can you give us a sense of how many persons were charged with breaching those protocols? You need to unmute your mic, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Bob. Good morning to your viewers and listeners all across the globe. Good morning to my fellow panelists. I'm glad to be on your show again, Mr. Bob. Let me first indicate that both the minister and Dr. Mitchell are aware that I was going to be on your show. And so I expect that government work doesn't stop on a weekend, and they are busy taking care of a number of things every day, every night throughout the period. So I wish to make that very, very clear. I have decided to come on because I consider that this is an important forum for us to share information and to ensure that members of the public, people who are listening, others who will hear from them, will hear some of the things that we need to say. So right off the bat, your question was essentially how we are managing in Grenada. I did look in its entirety, Dr. Keynes Douglas part on your show, and I did notice the clip you put in the beginning, which was confusion in the Caribbean. I would like to phrase it a slightly differently.
I intentionally chose that clip.
Yes, I thought so. I thought I would like to phrase it slightly differently, that if there is a less confusion anywhere in the world in relation to the management of COVID-19, it is in the Eastern Caribbean states, and in particular, it is Grenada. I know. So we do have some issues and some lack of clarity that we need to bring to the public. It's an ongoing process. It's unfolding. You may have remembered me saying the last time I was on your show, and curiously enough, ironically, the last time I was on your show, we were discussing the COVID-19 bill. And if you will recall, the controversy that surrounded that bill was essentially we were trying to do so many things in that bill. Some were described as draconian measures, serious penalties, police powers, and all of that were designed for us to control COVID-19 and the spread of it. And there were lots of criticisms, lots of concerns, valid concerns, meritorious concerns about how far we were going with those measures that we were seeking to implement. I suspect this morning you are about to tell me at some point in time that we are not going far enough and that we need to do more.
That is not my job. My job is to call balls and strikes.
And we need to do more. Somebody is going to say it this morning. You will see some text coming up on your screen where they're going to say,
Mr. Attorney General, let's get to the point here. The point is, how are we ensuring that there is proper enforcement? Because what we've observed, we have witnessed certain breaches of the COVID-19 protocol by returning nationals that put the Grenadian local population at risk. So the question is, how has enforcement measures, would you say, been successful in ensuring that we do not continue to have those breaches moving forward?
Yes. Let me say again that we are dealing with people, and we have decided that There are certain things that we can do having regard to our resources. And persons coming into Grenada, and I know we are talking about persons entering Grenada as against the local population, maybe not wearing a mask or not socially distancing, even though that it's quite a concern as well, having regard to the various quarantine breaches. That there are two places that quarantine isolation is being done. Essentially, locations which are identified by the Ministry of Health that persons will be allowed to self-isolate there. In those locations which are government approved,
Yes.
we ensure that we have examined those facilities. And when I say we, I mean the technical people of the Ministry of Health have examined those facilities with the view of ensuring that the facility is capable of isolating persons, whether you have self-contained apartments, whether there is a facility for providing meals for that person so that that person doesn't have to come out, whether that person can survive with all of the necessary amenities in that particular institution or establishment, and whether there is sufficient security at that establishment to ensure that visitors are not allowed to come and visit that person, and to ensure that that person does not leave and go somewhere else. Now, we have had, in addition to that, we have also had home quarantine approvals given. In those cases, and it's a narrow category of cases. In fact, it has evolved to the point where it's only as I said, a narrow category of persons who will be allowed home quarantine. But the bottom line on home quarantine is to ensure that your home, your apartment is equipped and suitable for home quarantine, together with the so you will wear a watch and you'll be in that home. There will be contact with you on a daily basis from the Ministry of Health, inquiring of your symptoms, asking if you have any needs. What is expected to happen is that you are supposed to give a list of the persons who will deliver food for you. And so that it has to be an approved list of persons who will deliver food to you. It could be a family member, but we need to understand this. And not more than one person is allowed to bring food for you. And there should be no interaction at that stage when food is delivered to you. Mr. Bob, you may not know, but I, on an urgent personal family matter, was required to visit New York recently. I traveled up to New York last month on the 10th of October, and I spent several weeks there in New York. And I was very anxious when I was going into the belly of the beast, Mr. Bob. And so I'm fortunate today. I don't have any symptoms, nor do I have COVID-19. I've done so many tests. I came and I was allowed to self-quarantine at my, I have a self-contained apartment. Two of them I had, and in one of those, the authorities came, visited it, assessed it, and this is what is supposed to happen. Assessed it and ensure that it was fitted so for me to be able to self-isolate in that facility. Thereafter, I did
yes, Mr. Ramdani, I get all of that, but my question is, how many persons have been charged so far for breaching those quarantine protocols? If you don't have the data, that's fine.
No, I do have the data. It's at least 3 persons. I don't know if you're speaking, but it's at least 3 persons have been charged with breach of quarantine. Right? In fact, I believe the number is 4. Cumulatively, the number is 4.
Okay.
So you asked the question, how do we ensure going forward that there won't be breaches? Mr. Bob, unless, and even in places of quarantine, government-approved facilities, let's not talk home quarantine. Let's talk with government-approved facilities. My information is that the gentleman, as you described earlier, who had his leg broken after trying to escape, that he was actually a person who visited a person who was in quarantine. That was my information. And that he, when the security came, he tried to evade and jumped over a balcony and injured himself in that way. We are dealing with people here. Unless we can put a police officer at every door, these individuals who are in quarantine will have to get food. They will have to be visited by a medical professional from time to time to do tests, perhaps. So there is going to be some level of interaction with individuals wherever we place them in quarantine. Wherever we place them in quarantine. And so the people element that you will have persons who are not responsible. You will have
lack of personal responsibility. So therefore, how then do we enforce or how do we ensure, for example, I believe,
Yes.
and I'm going to bring in Marie shortly,
Yes.
the hotels might have stricter protocols with respect to how, freedom of movement, right?
Yes.
But
Let me
but but
let
I
me
think one of the concerns that people have is the home quarantine. So I think Margaret Francis was asking who or slash what is that narrow category that is allowed home quarantine. That may not be a question that you can answer,
no,
but
I'll be able to
certainly,
answer that.
how do you enforce persons who are at home, right? What kind of enforcement mechanisms happen there? I know that
Be-
there is a geo
yes.
watch, which,
Before I
yes,
go on,
go
Mr.
ahead.
Bob, I want
Yeah.
to complete that thought in relation to hotels and other facilities which are allowed to be approved facilities. Let me say this, that we are continuing to assess and monitor those facilities' capacity, capability, willingness, and level of compliance. And the administration is quite prepared. In fact, we are looking at this on a daily basis, that if there are breaches at particular facilities, then those facilities will no longer be allowed if those breaches are so egregious and can't be corrected and we are concerned about them, they will not be allowed to continue to be facilities. So I know they're listening. And so they need to understand that we are not going to take lightly that if you have persons at your facility who are under quarantine, that you are lax in your supervision, your security measures, your level of compliance. And if you are lax and we find that this was not simply a single occasional blink, and this is somewhat of a worrying feature, and you can't fix it, and we are concerned, we will err on the side of caution. And so I sort of give some of an indication here that we're not treating with this that yesterday we did it that way, and so today we're going to do it this way. Yes? Coming to home quarantine right now, I was asked what are the categories of person. In fact, it's a Ministry of Health notice. There's a notice on the Ministry of Health website, and it says here, home quarantine will be granted under the following criteria. If the person traveling is or the persons in the traveling party are over 65. Now, let me give a note here that this came to me about 2 days ago. As we say these things, they evolve all of the time. So persons
But
should not
those are the
listen.
current regulations. But you're
These are
saying
the ones that came to me 2 days ago. By today, they
correct.
may have changed. And so I'm not saying this as the notice from the Ministry of Health. I wish to make that clear. If you are going to travel, then you should go to the appropriate website, the Ministry of Health site,
For the most recent
for the
updates.
most recent update.
Yes.
But the one that I have on my phone here, if the person's traveling is or persons are over 65 or traveling with young children or minors in their party, 3, diplomats or government officials, 4, have a disability or medical condition, and all of these persons must pass a pre-screening at the airport. So you can see the categories there, and you can fall in one of these categories, but if your home is not suitable, you will not be given approval for home quarantine. When I turned up at the airport, and this is the reason I was saying it earlier, I was trying to go through that. I was screened at the airport, and I had one of the tests at the airport. And of course, I wasn't released from the airport. I was then escorted to a taxi that brought me to the self-contained apartment. And there I remained for the next 4 days. And then I was tested on day 4. And I still remained there. And on day 5, I was given the results. And even then, Mr. Bob, even then, I inquired of my family. And I said to them, I have received 2 tests since I have come back to Grenada. Are you, and I've been cleared, none of these tests are negative, I have no symptoms. Are you comfortable with me returning home? I'm pleased to say that my family did say to me, well, if the tests are clear, you can come back home now. I say that part with a smile, but it's important that we need to be responsible in the way we manage this. Because if you send any one of these persons, these categories home, unless we have the resources, and we don't, Mr. Bob, unless we have the resources to place a police officer outside of the home of these individuals, we will have to rely on the technology of the geofencing watch. We'll have to
Correct.
rely.
Relying on the technology of the geofencing watch, again, folks express concern, and that's why I have Kizzy here, who probably can speak to that or not. But other folks who have traveled, again, this is third-party information. I'm prefacing all of this to say, and I'm putting this in close quotes, right? Folks have said that, for example, the geofencing technology hasn't been very effective, right?
I will be careful with anecdotal information unless that comes to me in a verified way. And as a legal professional, I have to understand where my limitations end and when I have to begin to rely on technical people.
Mhm.
Here, the technical people being the health officials and the individuals who are managing this technology of the geofencing watch. And so that is how I am basing that. There are lots of people who have said many various things, and we have continuously been checking the accuracy. In fact, when I wore the watch, it wasn't simply to wear the watch to go home. I was constantly asking them to let me know where you're seeing me, when you're seeing me. Is my watch going offline? And in fact, I do know. I hope I can say this, that we have actually conducted several controlled tests of the watch where persons have worn the watch and they have moved to certain location, right? These are people who are negative tested people, not people who were tested positive at all. Negative tested people and have moved to various locations, and the technologists, the technological guys, the guys who are looking and monitoring this, who are responsible for the system, are looking to see whether they can track them. And the information coming back is that they can track them. You can see where they are. It's on this basis that but I was going to end that sentence about responsibility, the wearing of the geofencing watch. That is not enough. We also expect and require that these persons will be responsible, because you can wear that watch and by the time you run out of your premises and run up the road to some shop, we will have to get there to pick you up, and that will take some time, meaning the response time, even if you are in America and you call 911, there's a response time. Sometimes it's 10 minutes, sometimes it's half an hour, depending on where you are, what's the kind of traffic. So there will be a response time. So these are measures that Grenada's government has taken, like every other government in the region, where we have decided to open our borders and we have put these measures in place. So far, the breaches that you have described, I think there are about 4 persons who have broken the quarantine measures that in relation to what we have spoken about.
Mhm.
And I know they have been charged, or they will all be charged. I expect that the police commissioner will be taking those steps, and they will be taken through the process in court. So, to summarize, our measures that we have adopted are coming from the experience that we look at around the world, around the region, and our own assessment of what we need to do so we can return Grenada to some degree of normalcy. I am sure some of my colleagues who will speak after me here now will say that it is a good thing that we have opened our borders in some respect. I know there are lots of people that says close it up. Lots of people say close it up. But there's quite a lot of people who require this economy to be moving, require family members to come back, require friends to visit. And so we are trying to find the right balance. That is what we are trying to find, the right balance. And I can say it's about 3 months now since I have last been on your program.
Mhm.
Grenada is still a country without any COVID-19 deaths. The few cases that we have currently on island, I believe there are 3 of them. They're all persons who are now presently in quarantine. Yes, we have done some contact tracing in relation to one of the quarantine breaches, and all of those persons we have come into contact with, they have also been placed in self-isolation and quarantine. And so we are looking back in hindsight, like I say, knock on wood, keep your fingers crossed. We are assessing every aspect. We're not leaving this to chance, Mr. Bob. I mean, there's a lot of good fortune occurring here in terms of how we're getting it right. But we are at that place where we are managing so far to keep Grenadians generally, by large part, safe. Yes? And we are able to now go out and visit restaurants again, following protocols. I think Dr. Keynes Douglas will be glad to use these words as the
All
most
right.
popular words in the
Yes,
Caribbean.
Mr.
Protocol,
Ramdani. Yes,
mask,
let's
social distancing.
correct. Yes, let me get to Marie and Kizzy. Thank you guys for being so patient and waiting in the wind. Marie, I want to start with you. Now, your hotel has been approved as one of the facilities in Grenada where folks can actually have a good experience while in quarantine. How has it been, first of all? how has your experience been with returning nationals? And more importantly, what kind of security protocols do you have in place at your facility to ensure that folks are not breaching those quarantine protocols when they check in?
Mike?
Let's unmute your mic. There we go. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning, everybody. This was a discussion that we had during lockdown as a family. We are a family-run resort. One of the questions that came up, okay, if the government does need quarantine rooms, will we provide it for them? And it was a big debate. It could put a bad stain on our resort, or it's a way that we can continue our livelihoods and get some employment in for the guests, for the staff. So it was a big battle. And then in the end, we had a meeting with NADMA, and they came down to the resort, and we spoke about a lot of the different protocols and ways that we can safely quarantine back then it was the cruise ship staff when they were coming back home. So I believe that was back in June. So we've been doing this for a while. And one of our major concerns that we told NADMA is it's going to be very difficult for us as a resort that isn't used to having serious security measures in place to keep these people in their rooms. We recognized that that was going to be the number one challenge from the beginning. And so we worked with NADMA and we put different protocols in place, including having a security guard in a specific area. The quarantine guests were only in a specific area. They were allowed outside time, which was on their balconies. And when they were outside, they had to wear their masks. And the number one thing that we did is we made sure that when the cruise ship staff who were returning home came to Grenada, first off, we made sure and send off a list of all of the rules that they did have to comply with when they came back home. Two, that when they did arrive, we told them over the phone that, okay, welcome to True Blue Bay Resort. Unfortunately, this isn't a holiday. This is going to be a quarantine holiday. So these are the rules and procedures that you're going to have to follow. So the number one thing was making sure that telling them in person, over the phone, in writing, and making them understand that this isn't business as usual. This is a different type of situation that the whole world is in. Making sure that they understood the protocols and the rules and what we expect of them, and then also what they could expect from us in terms of food delivery, ensuring that that they're taken care of. They need to exercise. We'll provide a yoga mat for them so they can exercise in their room. Give them a list of different exercise YouTube pages that they can follow. So these were all the different things that we made sure that their livelihoods were taken care of while we made sure that we took care of the Grenadian livelihoods. So we did have security in place at in the quarantine area 24 hours a day. And they were also briefed on what our procedures were and what the resort's procedures were. And NADMA would check up on them. They had WhatsApp groups for everybody, and we had their information as well, their contact information. So this whole thing has been a learning process for Grenada, for the hotel industry, for the returning nationals coming back to Grenada. And as you said earlier, every day something's evolving, something's changing. So we just have to keep on our toes as best as possible.
Kizzy, you are in Grenada. You just completed your period of quarantine as well. Did you do a home quarantine or did you do a hotel quarantine?
Not hotel, not home, but I quarantined at a state-approved villa. And so it's been probably 3 weeks now. The process for me went really smoothly. From getting into Grenada on the airport, that process was a bit lengthy, but it didn't feel lengthy at all because of there's like a bit of an assembly line process there. Before leaving, I went onto the government's website. I thought that they made the protocols clear on the website. There was a bit of redundancies in the process on the airport, but overall the process was fine. I had to take
what specific redundancies?
So, for instance, when you get to and this was I came on the second JetBlue flight, so let me put that out there. So a lot may have changed by then. I don't know, but when we got to immigration, you had to go to the immigration window, I believe 3 or 4 times, different times. And it wasn't clear or obvious to me why that was happening. So it's sort of, based on the things that we did, I think at one point they gave us, this tag that said we were a high-risk country, coming from a high-risk country. I think at another point they checked our passports. It just seemed like it didn't need to be divided up into all of these different parts. And then overall, though, I would say, like, because everything was broken up, like, you didn't feel like you were standing online for a very long time. So after leaving the airport, we took the taxi, and there was a protocol for entering and making sure that you're sanitized and wearing a mask and so on. And then we were here where we quarantined for 5 days before we were given the approval to leave. For me, it was clear that I wasn't to leave quarantine. We could go on the balcony area. It was clear that we weren't to leave until we were tested and received a negative test. The nurse came on the Wednesday, that was day 4, and then we received our results later that evening. And I believe that they also contacted the owner of the villa that we stayed at for quarantine.
What about the geofence technology? Were you outfitted with that as well?
I was not. And I know just from looking in, I was sort of surprised that the AG talked about like the geofencing watch and using it, because it wasn't clear to me like how routinely or how consistently it has been used. But personally, I have not used it.
Okay. All right. And now, Kizzy, you made a point. I'm going to cite what you said on social media. At least part of it. You said, my concern is how many people breach quarantine and go undiscovered because they subsequently test negative.
Right.
I think, yes. So can you expand on what you were trying to, the point?
Sure. And then before, I do want to say a couple things. I think that the ministry, the Ministry of Health's protocols, their communication about their protocols there's a lot that's commendable about that. But as you probably mentioned earlier, I work in public health, and I think like a lot of our communication, our programs, our protocols, all of it, it sort of lives and dies based on like how accessible that is. And I think that's where that's number one, where I think there's a lot that could be improved on, and I could talk about that in a second. But then number two, the protocols as written are strong, they're robust. As someone in public health, I think that they are appropriate and acceptable. But again, like my concern is in terms of how it's being operationalized, the enforcement of it. I completely recognize the balance of trying to have like this home quarantine process for returning nationals in particular, right? Because it is costly to quarantine at one of the hotels or even at the government site, right? For a number of 5, 6, or 7 days. So I get that. I get the desire to do that. And I commend the government for wanting to create that option. But if, and as AG Ramdani said, we don't have the resources to have a police officer stand outside every home quarantine. If we don't have the resources to have a police officer, a health official, or any other government official to routinely and randomly check on the folks that are in home quarantine, then it's something that I don't think that we can do, unfortunately. Because while, yes, I think the government, throughout this entire process that I've been following since March, there is a focus on personal responsibility. And
it's like an honest system, but again, how you're going to rely on humans to be personally responsible?
Exactly. What my perspective is always that, humans err, right? Human cooperation is never a given, right? And then also I think, we need to shift towards like structural solutions versus like personal responsibility, because people will buck the rules. This is frustrating for some individuals. For me, it wasn't. But I think if the government recognizes that there are not resources available to have like a robust management of home quarantine, then I think that home quarantine, it unfortunately cannot be an option.
You think it's not sustainable?
I don't. And then one last comment. So the breaches that we have heard about, outside of the one where the security guard caught the person, but the other breaches that we have heard about is because those individuals tested positive. And then so they, in trying, because they tested positive, then they had a different route for post-test than someone who tested negative. If you tested negative, you get a phone call and you're told you're free to go into the community, you test negative. If you test positive, then I imagine that then you're gonna be escorted into the government, the state managed quarantine facility. And so my concern that I had posted is that whether there are people who tested negative and they went undiscovered because when they got that phone call, the government did not know where they actually were, right? And if they tested positive, fine, like they are not a risk to individuals. But if a lot of people are testing negative, if a lot of people are breaching quarantine and the government does not have a good handle on how many or what proportion of people in quarantine are actually breaching, then I think we're heading down a really dangerous road, considering that the positivity rate is increasing in New York, in other parts of the US, in the UK. So as we have people coming in now, we're increasing the likelihood of people coming in and potentially having been exposed since getting their negative PCR test before coming onto the island. So that's my concern, because we can say only 4 individuals breach quarantine, but we don't know that, right? Because we're calling individuals to give them their negative test results. So I would really want to know like what the true proportion of people who are remaining in quarantine is.
Marie, I see you're nodding there. Do you want to jump in, Mr. AG? I'll get back to you shortly.
Yes, please. I think
I will get back to you shortly, Mr. AG, but I'll have Marie first. Thank you.
Well,
Marie, go ahead.
How it works at True Blue Bay Resort, and I know a lot of the other facilities, is there's 3 points of releasing somebody who is in quarantine. The first contact is for the guest. The guest gets a call from the ministry and they are said, okay, you're clear to go. The second contact is the police. So the police who is at the resort gets a call saying, okay, these people are ready to go. And then I personally get a message from NADMA saying these people are able to release today. So we've had people who said, okay, I've got a call from the ministry, I'm able to leave. And I say, I'm sorry, you can't leave because the police haven't got a call and we haven't got a call yet. So you cannot leave the property yet. They get upset. Obviously, this is ridiculous, blah, blah, blah. But in the end, we're following our procedures and we just have to explain to that. We need to get NADMA or the Ministry of Health's approval first for you to leave. And I would call them up and say, hey, what's going on with this person? They say, okay, yes, they can leave the resort. And great, they check out, they're happy to go, they run around, yay, I'm free, and then and then they're on their merry way. But
you experience some belligerence from some of your guests, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and the problem, I think, is the different perceptions of what quarantining should be. So, I've had very small amounts of difficult guests. One older lady, she was very upset that she couldn't see her daughter and that her daughter was supposed to be dropping food for her. And she thought it was completely inhumane that she couldn't see her daughter and, her daughter couldn't socially distance and give her the food and she couldn't have a conversation with her. And I had to explain that is how it is, but she was very upset. It was her perception of what quarantine should be. And I had to explain otherwise. And, we got the whole threat. She's going to go on the media. She's going to do all this. And, that is kind of similar to what people who have had difficulty quarantining, they think that it's not correct the way that it's being done. But as I said, it's just a handful of people that have been like that. And we have had quite a few quarantine people come through the resort, not had any problems and then go, get freed the right way and then go on into the public.
Mr. Maramdani, we will be taking a break. I have to come up for air and I'll come back and give you a chance to respond. Stand by, folks.
So, my friends, I want to salute publicly the doctors, the nurses, the orderlies, the lab technicians, the Dos Santos lab, which is proven to be one of excellent resource for us, such that other people who are having to rely and to send out tests to CARFA, we're able to do it here. I want to thank the Cayman Islands government, who we've been working quietly behind the scenes in the region. Even though we have 50,000 kits coming through PAHO, as I indicated to you the last time, we bought another 20,000 kits, which are the ones used in South Korea, but compatible with the machines that we have here, because we need to be able to stock up on these kits and stock up on the swabs. In fact, the biggest problem we have now is access to swabs, and therefore we've been managing that process. The leadership of PAHO, the leadership of CARFA has been absolutely brilliant in their interaction with us. I have been in contact with the Director General of the WHO twice in the last week.
Welcome back, folks. Mr. Ramdani, you've been waiting in the wind. With respect to the alleged breach of quarantine by to America, well, we don't know if they're Americans. The originating country was the United States. Again, as an ethical matter, I don't think it is my place to reveal names of persons. I think that would be unprofessional of me. But have these persons been charged?
Mr. Bob, before I go on to answer that, I need to make a comment on something Ms. Louison and Ms. Fielding have said.
Yes.
I commend Ms. Louison for her statements in relation to her own experience and her own analysis of those rules that which are in place. I wish to, in particular, though, mention this reference to an honor system, and to say that every law, or rather the maintenance of rule and law in the world, the maintenance of rule and law and order in the world depends on large part on society's willingness to comply with those laws. No matter how many policemen you put in a country, no matter how many systems you have in place, an honor system is never far from compliance and getting people to respect laws. So let me make that very, very clear. For we, the administration, the Ministry of Health, does not depend on persons on their own honor system to stay at home and in quarantine. In fact, the breaches we have had have been in equally at home and in establishments and approved facilities. The man who jumped off the veranda, I am informed that that was not at any home quarantine facility. That was in an approved facility. Yes, I'm not going to call the name of the facility, and so if we were to stop the home quarantine because people are going to breach, then I don't know how we will continue the other quarantine, because people have been proven to have breached. Yes, and so I do believe we have to be careful that we are all concerned that people will breach quarantine. We're all concerned about that, but we need to understand that the systems that are being put in place are being tested and are being, when someone breaks it, it's because you're dealing with the human element. At some point, somebody will act irresponsibly. Now, let me say, in relation to how the airport system is structured and whether there is a form given to them, the administration has recently been working with a particular group. And so now to get approval.
What is the name of that group?
I think I'm not sure, but the system is called an AMBER system, which requires you to go online and put in all of your information, including that you have a negative test, and put that form online. Mm-hmm. And then
now, is that
something
form...
is generated.
Yes.
And it's generated, and if you don't print it when you come on the flight, you will be handed it. In fact, you will be handed a printed copy when you get to the airport. And that will say to you all of the things that are required to be said to you, where you will be in quarantine, what are your obligations. I help to work on that, to guide that form. What are your obligations? You will have no visitors. This is how you're expected to behave. And in fact, I have recommended, and that change will be implemented. In fact, that system is going to be rolled out from tomorrow, I am advised. And in addition to that,
what is the name of that system? You said it's an AMBER system.
AMBER system, AMBER system. Okay, I don't know the exact
name. You provided us with an update here. Thank you for that.
And I have also recommended, and this is going to be implemented as well, that no one will have a telephone call to tell them that you're cleared. Yes, you are going to start getting a written confirmation from the relevant official, the Ministry of Health. And that written communication will also be conveyed to the facility and to the geofencing personnel. So all of the relevant stakeholders will be given a relevant note so that no one will be able to say that I got a telephone call. You will have to produce a written document that says you have been cleared and you are allowed. We are working with this process. This is a daily, nighttime, daytime, weekend process that we are engaged in. Yes, I've put on a tie specially for you today, Mr. Bob. On the weekends we are working. When I've come out this,
all right.
we're continuing. We're going to continue to work. We're going to continue to work to look at all aspects. So the airport process from the time Ms. Louison came in to now has evolved. The process, I'm hoping, I have experienced it on the 24th of October when I came back. And there you can see them trying to streamline the process to ensure that you come through the process as quickly as possible, but at the same time, they touch and hit all of the concerns. They get you checked. They look at all the aspects that they need to look at, and then you're walked out to a taxi. You don't get to go out and take a taxi. I know the language of Ms. Louison that they went and they got a cab. I would prefer, my narrative of that is that you are escorted to a taxi, a designated taxi driver who understands the protocol. He is pre-approved. He knows what he has to do. So we don't have any regular taxis out there waiting to pick you up and carry you somewhere and you can stop off to get KFC. No, that will not happen. You are being sprayed. You're going to sit in a taxi with your mask on, and you'll be driven to a pre-approved facility, and you'll be seen out of that, handed over, yes, to someone like Ms. Fielding or her staff, and thereafter they will take the measures thereafter, and the ministry will continue to monitor that. So we are taking steps. We are evolving. We are learning from the lessons. The breaches. Yes, in relation to the particular question you answered me, I am not the law enforcement agency responsible for charging, but I do expect that those individuals, I think, believe they're still in quarantine. And I think the approach of the police force has been that they will allow them to complete their quarantine. And when there is a negative test, then criminal prosecution will commence.
So criminal prosecution would proceed. Let's say that somebody breached the protocol, but then they test positive for COVID-19. After recovering, then they would be charged.
I expect that is how it will happen. Okay. Yes, there should be. I can hardly see anyone not deciding to charge such a person, but I can't speak for the Commissioner of Police nor the Director of Public Prosecutions. These are agencies which are independent. Yes, so far, everyone who have breached the regulations on the quarantine has been prosecuted. Every single person.
Every single person
that has breached quarantine.
There were some other concerns, Mr. AG, as well, with respect to mask enforcement. Obviously, you're the Attorney General. You're not the law enforcement. You're part of law enforcement, certainly, but you are not a police officer on the beat. You're not, the Commissioner of Police.
Ask your question, Mr. Bob. Go ahead.
Yes, I would be. I would ask the question. You were filibustering all this time. But the question is, there has been some public concern with respect to unreasonable enforcement of the mask ordinance. Do you think that has been sort of over-policed, would you say?
You see this, Mr. Bob? Do you see this question? You hear the question? On the one hand, we are saying, what more are we doing to ensure that we remain safe? If we recognize that persons have broken quarantine and individuals who have tested positive have been out in public, visiting restaurants, and we recognize this, how any one of us sitting in Grenada, walking around, living here, can look at anyone else in the face and say, you know what? Why are you so hard on me to wear a mask? You're not living in Grenada. I've been to New York, but the rest of us are here. We turn up at restaurants to eat with our family.
Mhm.
And I could have been at one of those restaurants at
Mhm.
19, Mr. Bob. Now, I am not by any way saying to you, in saying this, that we are adopting a harsh enforcement policy. I am aware that the police approach has always been one to seek compliance first. Can you please put a mask on? Can you please ensure you follow the protocols? Yes? And that is being the general approach of the police
But
force.
I think one of the concerns that people have is that, I'm in I'm in a private vehicle, right? Or I'm on my balcony at home, but you're still giving me a ticket for not
No,
wearing a mask.
no, I am not aware that anyone in their home and on a balcony gets a mask. I'm not aware of that at all.
You mean
In
a
relation
charge?
to a charge,
Yeah.
yes, or even someone speaking to them about it. I'm not aware of that. That to me is very anecdotal. I would be very surprised that that is true. In relation to being in your vehicle, I have heard instances of officers stopping people. I have not been able to confirm those, but the commissioner has spoken to me, and he has indicated that that is not something that they expect that will happen. Yes. So if you are in a vehicle, of course, with another persons, and I'm glad you raised this question because this is an important aspect of it. Persons have raised the point that if you are in a vehicle with another person, why are you stopping the car and nobody has on a mask? My answer to that is this: that you are required to wear a mask if you're with someone else in less than the social distance with somebody else. Your answer is that this is my family. Now, in heaven's name, how is the police officer expected to know that?
Mhm.
Yes? How is he expected to know? And you create a law enforcement issue. You, the public member who's sitting in your vehicle with another person, now places a burden on that police officer to decide whether, oh my goodness, the regulation is seeking to protect Grenadians, everyone living here. The regulation says you must wear a mask when you're near somebody else. And I see two people in a car. Oh my gosh, I have to assume that they're family members. Do I make that assumption and let them go? Will all of the police do that? I am saying that we owe our law enforcement the responsibility. We owe them this, that we should not have them worry whether I have to decide to stop this vehicle or not. When I travel with family members in my car, I put on my mask and I tell them, put your mask on because I don't want to have to wonder whether some police is going to say the protocols require masks to be worn. And this is what I speak about when I say that, you know what, we all are required. People go around, I'm standing waiting for my child at school, and I see some persons are waiting there without a mask. And we tell the children who are coming out, put on your mask when you come out the gate. Yes? So our children are walking out from the school and they've put on the mask, and the parent that is there waiting does not have on a mask. We, the adults or people, persons in positions of responsibility, and I think all of us are, we need to demonstrate that we understand what this means. And so sometimes when you see a man walking alone with a mask on and nobody's around him, don't laugh at him. He is trying to wrap his mind to get into that habit. And this is important. We have to get into these habits where it is easy for us to do it. Not suddenly remember, oh my gosh, I'm at the door of the supermarket and I left the mask in the car. It could happen to any one of us, yes? But the habit of wearing a mask, we're in a new world. This is a new dispensation. Grenada has been relatively safe so far. It is our hope that all of us will continue to remain safe, that our contact tracing, and I see your little note on Dr. Motley's, Prime Minister Motley's piece
Yes.
on gratitude for the frontline workers. I wish to applaud that and to say that, you know, we are quick to be critical, and we need to be critical. This is how democracies work. But at the same time, these people are risking their lives. And so
I think
to
the
do just
attorney.
your little
Yeah.
part, just
Mhm.
your little part. Wear a mask, please.
Mhm. All right. I'm going to come to Marie. I know that you have to go. You have a hotel to run, but certainly I want to thank you for giving us some time with you this morning. Now, tell us final comments as we go into a period of heightened coronavirus cases, especially here in the United States, which is a major source market for Grenadian tourism. How are you going to ensure that you keep that surveillance up while also offering a good experience for persons who are coming home?
Well, the main thing is we're gonna continue always evolving with the protocols, looking through every single step that happens from the time somebody checks in, actually from the time people book, from the time people inquire, from the marketing that we're putting out to when they check in, to when they're here at the resort, ensuring that they have all of the information, to ensuring our end is covered, and ensuring that, you know, while they are here, they are sane and they're not going to have to feel the need to leave a quarantine facility because they do feel mentally well. A lot of this has to do with mental wellness, you know, making sure that they are comfortable and that their surroundings are nice, that they're in a nice room, that they're in a clean room with lots of gardens. And, you know, luckily in Grenada, we have beautiful weather almost all year round. So, you know, that does help to people's mental well-being. And, you know, going forward, we never expected that this would end anytime soon. We were in this for the long run, like thinking, okay, this isn't going to last 3 or 4 months. We were expecting this to continue into next year, and we're still expecting that maybe this time next year we might be a little bit more lenient with a lot of our protocols, but we're planning to keep this going for as long as it needs to be. You know, we're responsible for keeping the public safe by ensuring that nationals who do want to come home can come home, and they do it safely. So we're going to keep it up. We're always evolving, always changing our protocols to suit everybody's needs as best as possible. And yeah, it's going to be a long road, but we're here for it. We're here to do our best.
Kizzy?
Okay, so I have a couple thoughts. So first of all, I hope that it was clear that I really think that the Ministry of Health, the government of Grenada, has done an excellent job, a close to excellent job, managing the coronavirus in Grenada. You know, Grenada is one of perhaps 20 or 21 countries that don't have
21 countries, yes.
Right, that doesn't have a CDC health advisory because of how low the COVID cases are on the island. However, I think what I was trying to get to, what my focus is the gap that we're seeing, and how important it is to make sure that those gaps don't exist. I recognize that, yes, we need everyone to cooperate, but what I mean by saying like we must have more structural solutions is that we should expect that everyone will not cooperate. And starting from that frame of mind, what do we need to do to ensure that we can continue to protect everyone's health? I think, for instance, I think the fine for breaching quarantine is too low. You know, we are coming here as returning nationals, we're coming here as visitors, we are electing to be here. And I think that it needs to be a larger deterrent than it currently is. Whereas I think the fine for locals not wearing their masks from time to time, which will continue to happen, which I think, which will continue to happen, I think that's a little bit high for the average Grenadian. I think the government has done a great job following the science in many instances, but even something like the private vehicle, and you know, I looked at an interview with someone, a representative from RGPF, and they said they're gonna first tell you that you should wear a mask. If I'm driving in a private vehicle with my husband, who I live with, I should not need to wear a mask. That is not following the science. I understand that we're gonna have instances where people are in vehicles with individuals they do not live with. And then we should focus on like messaging to ensure that people are aware that when they are in that situation, that they should be wearing masks, right? Not everything needs to be enforcement, because when you do too much enforcement, then you get even more non-compliance because people get fatigued by the process. And I think we want to be very careful about where we want to increased enforcement and where we want to be a little bit more compassionate, especially to the Grenadians who live here. I think that the Grenadians who live here need to be centered in our response, right? We need to open the borders. We need to get the economy going. However, it shouldn't be at the expense of the Grenadians living here. And I think in all of our policies that needs to be really centered and focused on, and we need to be a little bit more compassionate. And the final thing I would say is, while the government has made it very clear of their protocols, there are numerous press briefings, right? Not every individual will go on the COVID19.gov.gd page. Everyone should. Right? We would expect that you're traveling in this time that you would do that, but not everyone will do that. And I think, there could be more done to make sure that their message is accessible, right? So working even like a hub like New York City, like working with some of the social and cultural groups, making sure that you have succinct, easily shareable messaging, thinking of WhatsApp. Even the infographics that the ministry has been creating are really great. And I think that those need to be shared. The press briefings, like having summaries of what went on, because not everyone is going to sit and listen through an entire press briefing. So as things change, as I said, they've been doing a good job, but I know that those of us living in New York, Grenadians in general, we have seen and heard all the stories and misinformation, and I think the government could do a better job of making sure that communication is clear and that everyone is aware of what is required and expected of them, so that there isn't a lot of sensationalization of what's happening here, and that people aren't confused.
Kizzy, very profound about misinformation and sensationalizing. I think probably that is baked into the cake in this period as well. Attorney General Ramdani, final words.
Very quickly, I must say that there are two aspects of society that we are dealing with in managing COVID-19. Those are the ones coming into the country and our local population. And we have evolved the system to work in such a way, as I said, rolling out tomorrow, everyone will be required to go online and fill this out. If not, go online and fill it out. When they turn up, they will definitely get, in any event, a document which sets out clearly their obligations and all the things that they have to comply with, and what will happen as a result. That form will also contain statements as to, if you breach, what are the consequences. So there will be no doubt at all, in fact, weeks now, there should have been no doubt in anyone's mind coming into Grenada as to what are your obligations and what will be the consequences for breach of the obligation. When it comes to the regular average person in Grenada, I think there are two things that really need for you to understand, and I don't think anyone in Grenada don't understand this. Wear a mask, socially distance. Yes? And the rest that you don't understand, when you turn up at a business establishment, you will be told. So when you turn up at a restaurant to eat, you will be told what you need to do, because that establishment has been told what they need to do. And if they don't comply, they know what the consequences will be. So as far as messaging is concerned, we have put systems in place which give the message directly to the individuals who have to be out. So there can be no one saying really that they miss the fundamentals as to what we are saying to them. Yes, coming to the amount of people being charged, I do know quite a bit of persons were charged when we started the lockdown in March. And a lot of them that were charged because they were out in periods of time when they should not have been charged. There hasn't been quite a lot of persons charged for not wearing masks. And so whilst you're reminded to wear masks, again, I reiterate, law enforcement has been taking a very practical, we understand, all of us, because I sit here with it as well, COVID fatigue. We understand COVID fatigue, and we're not done yet. So we understand what is going to happen to us when we have to continue with this process. And the police force, I am told and assured, and based on what I have seen, they're fully aware of how they need to interact with the public. So I wish to end by saying that there should hardly be any doubt as to what our obligations are. And I am asking every one of us to let us remind ourselves on a daily basis, if we have to wash that mask, let's wash it. Yes, so when we leave our homes and we come out and we are about to interact, I must say that whilst I can't speak about how many cold medicine has been sold, that I have hardly seen anyone sniffing and sneezing out in public. So I
But
do
again,
believe
Mr. Attorney
we have
General,
reduced.
that is anecdotal. You don't know that. You're not a
No, what
public
I'm
health.
saying to you is that with all of this masking and social distancing and hand sanitizing that has been taking place, it has also minimized contact and the spread of the ordinary flu virus. I, I don't need to have been given the statistics to see that. Yes, you can literally see how this is operating everywhere you go. I have a bottle in my car, sanitize. I have a little thing in my pocket, sanitize. And I see people doing the same thing. When ladies pack their purses in their bags, they're much bigger these days, so they can't be called purses. They put their little bottles, they put the little bottles in the bag. We are going out there prepared to deal with this. And I'm asking that, yes, I know one of the areas of criticism is how we law enforce and how much persons are being charged and how severe the penalties are. In fact, I just heard Ms. Louison say that the penalties are too small. We did get to there, didn't we, Mr. Bob? That we are ending this program with statements being made that the penalties are too small.
But
And
let's be
what
clear
that for
with
people,
penalties.
That would require another program. But Kizzy, what are you saying quickly?
I said, let's be clear on which penalties are too small.
but that poor people are being charged too much, the regular person. Let me say this, that from my analysis of what is happening in the magistrate's court, that local persons who are being charged with regular breaches of the protocols, the regular fine, I'm told, from the magistrate's court is about $150 per person. So whilst they have that maximum to play with, the courts itself has been approaching most of these in a particular manner. I don't wish to speak too much of how the courts are approaching it because the courts are judicially, they're independent of the executive, and they will have to continue to carry out, and they are an important gatekeeper to ensure that we get this right. So the magistracy and the judiciary needs to also play their role in getting this right. And they have been doing, Mr. Bob, let me end one last sentence.
You've been doing that for a minute or two.
Since
Please
lockdown
wrap
in
up.
March, our magistracy has, our chief magistrate has continued to operate from day one. He has not shut that court down and has been dealing with the magistrate's court matters throughout that period. These frontline workers need to be commended, and I end on that note. That we need to commend them, Mr. Bob.
Thank you, panel. Thank you so much for this very important discussion this morning. I wish to also thank our viewers and listeners for your very robust participation, your very critical and incisive questions, and that is what we attempt to do here on the Bub Report, is to have these very important discussions on issues affecting Grenada and the Caribbean. Very soon, the government of Grenada will be presenting the national budget. And here at the Bub Report, we will be presenting a series of programming to examine the implications of Budget 2021 during this pandemic period. On behalf of the producers of the show, I wish to thank our viewers and listeners and my esteemed panel this morning for participating. Everyone, have a pleasant and wonderful week ahead. Bye-bye.